Good afternoon and welcome on this beautiful Thursday afternoon here in Pasadena, California. And to those of you who are on from other places around the country, we send our greetings to you and send our warm weather to you if in fact you are in some place where it's not quite as comfortable as it is here. We moved from Spokane, Washington, 27 years we lived there, moved here a year and a half ago to Southern California. And last Saturday, they got 6 inches of snow on the ground in Spokane, Washington. So I'm glad I'm in Southern California. My name is Terry McGonigal, and I am the chair of the Convocation Committee. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation this afternoon for a variety of reasons. Susan Savitt Schwartz is the program director for the Pasadena Education Network. And Susan, we would look forward to hearing from you. In particular, my wife was a kindergarten teacher for 37 years and a reading specialist. So education lies at the heart of what our family has been devoted to and committed to. And we look forward to gaining from your wisdom. Let me introduce Susan to you for a moment. She has served as the program director for the Pasadena Education Network since 2008. She's a 23-year resident of Altadena, mother of 2 daughters, and she serves on the national leadership team for Integrated Schools .org as well. We're going to hear about integrated schools as well. Pasadena Education Network is an independent grassroots nonprofit organization that was founded by parents for parents in 2006. PEN's mission is to promote family involvement in public education in the Pasadena Unified School District so all children benefit. Now a network of more than 2,000 parents who support and send our children to PUSD schools. PEN provides information, free community programs, and services that help parents explore, evaluate, and engage constructively with their public schools. Susan will talk about PEN's work, how PEN's work has evolved to serve a more diverse audience, and why changing the narrative about public education is more important than ever. And given the times in which we live, Susan, your passion, your direction for PEN, and this message that you're going to share with us today has never been more important. So please take a look at the screen as I read our scripture, which is Psalm 25, verses 4 and 5, a prayer that talks literally about the educational process. And then I'll lead us in a short prayer. Show me your ways, Lord, and teach me your paths. Guide me in your truth and teach me. For you are God, my Savior, and my hope is in you all day long. Let us pray. O Lord, at a time when there are so many voices claiming that they speak the truth, but the words they speak do not line up with what we know to be true, that every person has been created in your image and every person is to be treated with the utmost dignity because every one of us carries the image of God. Susan is doing important work in helping to raise up the next generation of leaders for our city, our state, our country, and our world through the Pasadena Education Network. We're grateful for this important conversation that we'll have this afternoon. In Christ's name, amen. Welcome, Susan, and the floor is all yours.
All right. Well, thank you so much for inviting me here this afternoon. You heard who I am. I am the mother of 2 daughters, and they are now 22 and 27. And my 27-year-old is a first-year, second-grade teacher this year in New Haven, Connecticut. So I'm really proud of her and just trying to be a source of moral support when things get rough. As a first-year teacher, things do. But I'm really excited that she's inspired to do that work. So I'm going to talk, as Terry said, I'm going to talk a little bit about what we do what Penn does, how we got started and what we do, a little bit about our school district, Pasadena Unified. And then I'll touch a little bit on integrated schools, and there is certainly some the work I've done with integrated schools since 2017 has definitely informed and really deepened the way I think about the work I do with Penn. So that's something I'll talk a little bit about, and then I'll just be happy to take your questions. So I'm going to share my screen, but before we get started, I'd like to just hear a word or phrase from you all, anybody who has one. You can, I don't know if you're comfortable putting things in the chat or if you just want to unmute and say it out loud, but a word or a phrase that comes to mind when you think about the Pasadena Unified School District, PUSD. What have you heard about the district? And I'll just let you unmute and say something.
Challenged.
Challenged, okay. Anybody else got one? Say again?
Struggling.
Struggling. Ooh, challenged and struggling. Okay, keep going.
Abandoned by white liberals for private education.
Okay.
I would amen that.
Amen again.
All right. Does anybody here have children who attended the Pasadena Unified School District, or grandkids, or anybody, kids in your life who are in any of those schools right now?
Well, when I was here, 84 to 95, people left the public schools in droves. We sent our daughter went to Woodrow Wilson Junior High and Pasadena High School, and our son went to Pasadena High School. They both left the public school systems after they graduated from the public school system. They went on to pretty nice liberal arts colleges from the public school system, but they were certainly in a minority.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to thank you for letting me hear from you, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Let's see how this goes. I'm going to actually, let's see. I have to make sure I can see what I'm sharing. So can you all see my slides?
Yep.
Okay, good. All right. Let's see. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our public schools and changing the conversation a little bit. And I'm going to start with a little bit of kind of myth versus reality. I know that for many of us, the first thing we heard about, oops, I just jumped up. The first thing that we hear coming into this community is, oh, you can't send your kids to the public schools in Pasadena. I know when I moved here from Boston in 1999 with a 3.5-year-old, that is something I heard. I remember hearing stories of people who work for our district who were being shown around by realtors when they arrived and were told that. And one administrator said, when she asked the realtor, well, what is the local public school? That realtor didn't know. So a lot of messages that are repeated and repeated, but without any foundation in current, certainly fact, or knowledge, I should say. So Penn really, kind of evolved to try to help people see for themselves, help people actually go visit schools and make a more informed decision about where they were going to send their child, rather than just accept those messages that have been repeated on and on and on. So a little bit of information about the Pasadena Unified Schools. They currently serve about 15,000 students in grades K through 12. Actually, transitional kinder through 12, because in California, kids can start school now at age 4 in a transitional program. And that's a much lower number than it served when I moved here. But it's in part because the demographics of the area, the cost of housing, the fact that people are starting families later and having fewer children. So when I moved here in 99, I think from the year 2000, I saw this figure that in that year, in 2000, the number of children preschool age children, so 0 to 4, living in Pasadena, Altadena, and Sierra Madre, the communities served by PUSD, was about 13,400, something like that. And in 2018, that same number was 9,000, so down from 13.5 to 9,000 kids who are preschool age. So that tells you something about what's happening demographically in our community, and is a big piece of the reason that we and other districts around us have been struggling with declining enrollment. That said, there is an amazing scope of programs available to students in the Pasadena Unified Schools. So it's a school district that is made up of kids who are in Pasadena, Altadena, and Sierra Madre. There are a total of 23 schools, including 14 sites that serve elementary students, 6 sites serving grades 6 through 8, and 4 sites that serve grades 9 through 12. So we do have a couple of, we have a K-8 school, we have a couple of secondary schools that serve grades 6 through 12. But otherwise, kids are mostly in either elementary, which is kinder through 5th grade, middle, 6th through 8th grade, or high school, 9th through 12th grade. Some of the special programs that are available right now include dual language immersion programs. You may have heard about these. This is something where children are coming in at kindergarten and being immersed in a target language. So in the case of Pasadena Unified, we offer Spanish, Mandarin, French, and now Armenian, which is a slightly different program. But the idea of the dual language immersion is that the same curriculum all the kids are getting at all the schools is being given in the target language. So 90% of a kindergartner's day in the Mandarin program is actually, the instruction is happening in Mandarin. And then it ratchets down, so it's 80% Mandarin, 20% English, 70, 30, and so on until it's about half and half. And the goal is for students, by the time they finish high school, or even really by the time they're finished with middle school, they are essentially not just bilingual, but biliterate in the languages offered. There are some magnet programs that nurture academic development by integrating either science, technology, engineering, math, or the visual and performing arts across the curriculum. So all the schools have science, all the schools have arts, but the magnet schools have a focus where the focus area sort of is part of something you're doing all across the curriculum. So you're going to be using theater as part of your history lesson, or you're going to be using science or math, as part of your music or your social studies. So there is some international baccalaureate program offered in this district. That's an international program that was started for diplomats and their children in the 1960s, with a sort of a global focus, and also an idea that children are really learning to be inquirers and lifelong learners. We have a radically accelerated math program that's available to gifted students beginning in 6th grade. This is not just an honors math or a slightly accelerated program. This is a program where students are completing BC calculus by the end of 8th grade and going on to do college level mathematics in high school. Our high schools actually have some interesting things going on, something called college and career pathways or academies, where students, they're doing all their regular coursework that they would be doing, but they again have sort of a focus in several areas of career interest. So they get a chance to explore career interests, do internships, sort of see how their studies are actually connected to the work that they're going to be doing potentially when they get out of school. And it's not like somebody has to choose a career and you're really narrowing everything down. It's more just an opportunity for kids to explore and connect what their academics are to what they might be doing in the future. And then we also have an early college magnet where students can earn up to 2 years of transferable college credit while in high school. Now, this is something that is available. I think all of the schools students have the opportunity to concurrently enroll and take community college classes. And there are some opportunities to take a course where you're earning your high school credit and college credit with one class. But the early college magnet extends that and actually gives high school students a chance to earn up to 2 years of transferable credit for free while in high school. And this is done through a partnership with Pasadena City College, which has a satellite campus there. I'm going to just go on to, I can figure out how to do this. There we go. Just to give you a little bit of a sense of some of the class of 2022 and where they're going. We have the valedictorian from John Muir Early College Magnet did take advantage of that early college program to earn an Associate of Arts degree in Natural Science from PCC. And she is now at Harvard University this fall. This is just sort of a little bit of a picture about some of the places where our kids are going and some of the kinds of activities and experiences that they have under their belts by the time that they are leaving PUSD. So obviously this is not what everybody who leaves PUSD is doing. These are stars, but it gives you some idea of the kind of the breadth of offerings and possibilities that are available. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit here. I'm going to talk about Penn and what we do. And as Terry said, we're an independent grassroots organization. We were founded in 2006 and really started by families that had young kids who were hearing about the PUSD schools, things that were negative or dismissive, and thought, well, these people don't necessarily have experience in the schools themselves, or it's been decades since they've had kids who are school age. We should go and see what's actually happening. And so they arranged to visit the schools and kind of come back together again to compare notes. And out of this was born this organization. And as I was saying earlier, we're basically 3 part-time people on a website. So the website has quite a bit of information about each school. We have fact sheets, we have parents that you can contact and so on. But, we let people know when the tours are and how to do the open enrollment process. But really our mission is to connect people with information, to connect people with schools, and to connect people with each other. All with the aim of really encouraging families to participate in public education for the benefit of not just their own children, but all children in the district, in this community served by our district. So, countering the misperceptions is a big one. We do programs, which we've done virtually recently, but we've also done in person, where we have parents who are from the different schools kind of presenting their perspectives and the things they were thinking about when choosing a school. Let's see, it was good. We have a newsletter that just kind of goes out, a bulletin that goes out every week to let people know when school tours are and how the open enrollment process works, any deadlines they need to know, things like that. And here is just a quick snapshot from our website, so you can sort of see what some of the offerings are. We have our fact sheets, so you can get some specifics about a school. We have information about school tours. We have what we call our roster of parent ambassadors, which is a network of about 60 parents with kids all across the district, because at this point, when we started in 2006, it was mostly parents with preschool age kids. And now we're about 2,000 families that either have kids in the schools, K through 12, or are, considering their options. So one of the things that's very effective for us is just to be able to connect people with a parent whose kids attend a school they're thinking about. We help people navigate the open enrollment process because in this district, people have a home school, a neighborhood school they can attend, but they also have options to choose other schools in the district. So that's sort of what we do. And I will drop some links in the chat in a minute, so to share with you, but just to give you the idea. And I would say that when we started, we really, the focus was really on these middle-class, educated, mostly white families in Pasadena, Altadena, and Sierra Madre, who were, as somebody said earlier, leaving in droves and going to private schools, often without ever having really looked at the public schools because they'd heard they were bad. And so never actually even, went and looked. And I remember when I moved here in 1999, it was funny. I remember encountering some parents on the street one day when I was out for a walk, and they were talking about all the schools they were touring, and it was the private schools mostly. And I think there were one or two charter schools at that beginning to pop up at that point. And one of them said, look at us. We all have kids starting school next year. We should start our own charter school. And then it would be our school and we could make it whatever we want it to be. And wouldn't that be great? And I said, well, or, we could just all enroll our children at the school up the street, which at the time was Loma Alta Elementary School. And it would be our school and we would be involved, and it would be, it'd be the kind of place that we would want our kids to be. And it was funny because the conversation just stopped at that point when I said that. And nobody, it was like I was speaking in some alien language. Nobody knew what I was talking about. And I was a young parent. I didn't know. I was new to the community. And I just couldn't figure out why that wasn't a reasonable suggestion. But basically what Penn was doing at that beginning around 2006 was to say, listen, we can go to these schools and bring our families and join those communities, and our kids are going to be fine. So that was back then. Since then, we've really expanded to provide resources and programs in Spanish as well as English, and really reaching out to the wider swath of families in the community, because everybody needs that information, not just the families who might choose private school, but even the families who are probably going to end up in our public schools need to do so with the information. Did you know your child could learn French? Did you know that, there's a STEM magnet over here? Did you know that this school has, these kinds of programs? So that's information that everybody really should have. And we've also started really trying to be, have a more broadly representative board of our organization, and our parent ambassadors, the parents who we connect people with who have kids at the schools. And then also in the last few years, and this was really kind of a function in some ways of the pandemic, because it became much easier to go to people's meetings. Penn has been actively collaborating with other parent groups in the district. There's an African American Parent Council. There's PTA, of course. There's an English Learners Council. There's a group that represents foster parents and children with special educational needs and so on. So we've been doing a lot more in the way of leadership development and advocacy in, working with other parent groups in the district. I'm going to just stop for a moment, actually. I'll come back to this, but any questions at this point?
I'd like to ask a question. My name is Dean Thompson. I'd be interested, please, in the percentages of Pasadena residents who are public school and the percentages that are private school.
So it's a good question. And I know that right now Pasadena Unified is capturing only about a little over half maybe of the students, of the kids in this district who would be school age. Not all. What I don't know for sure at this point is what how the breakdown is of that other half between private schools and charter schools, because that's something that has really, I think the charter schools have done a lot to cut into both the district schools and the private schools. Charter schools are public, they're free. They're not as wide open as the district schools. They don't have to take everybody. They have limited space, and they may say, we can't really serve you as well as the public schools, if you have a particular learning need. So in some ways they're public, but kind of public and kind of not in that way. So I don't know what the breakdown is between the private schools and the charters, but right now Pasadena Unified captures about half of the population in terms of school age kids.
Do you have, Dr. Schwartz, do you have any data on the racial breakdown?
I do, and I don't have it right in front of me, but I could get it. It's interesting. I think our district used to be a much larger percentage of African American students, and now it's probably more predominantly Latino, although that doesn't necessarily mean immigrants who are learning the language. Latino can mean, this is California, right? But right now I would say, I'm going to look and see if I can find that actually. Any other questions while I'm taking a look here?
Yeah, Susan, this is Terry, just a comment. And as I mentioned in the introduction, we've only been here a year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
But I have heard comments from several people who are longtime residents of Pasadena that per capita, Pasadena has the second most number of private schools in the entire country, and only the Beltway around Washington, D.C. has more private schools. I don't know if that's true or not, but just driving around Pasadena, there are a lot of private schools. And so that has huge implications for the demographics of the kids who are in each classroom in Pasadena Unified School District. But it's going to have long-term implications for the nature of the culture of this community. As children either have the opportunity or don't have the opportunity to grow and develop with people who are going to be longtime residents here. So this is more of a comment / concern that the social stratification long-term of Pasadena, that number of private schools has some pretty significant implications.
Yeah, what's interesting is that this community has had a lot more private schools since it began. It's not something that just came into being, during the period of court mandated busing, for example, which I think a lot of people associate with that phenomenon. So it's true. There is a huge history of private schools in this community. And I think that, what's interesting is people do often just kind of say, well, my parents went to private schools. I went, it's just, I don't know anything different. And we've had some families who've come and, written about their experience having come from that background and come into the PUSD schools and said, oh my gosh, I had no idea that all this was here, that these things were being offered. So it's almost like, I think if you're not actually looking at what your options are, you're actually cheating yourself and your family of some amazing opportunities.
Right. I did see
just to answer the question that was asked before. Right now, roughly the enrollment in Pasadena Unified is about 58% Hispanic, 19% white, 10 to 11% Black, and about 5% Asian, and various other. So just as a quick, and then there was a question about ratio of students to teachers. It's interesting. That's the ratio of students to teachers is not a function of school size. I think sometimes people think, oh, it's a big school, there's going to be, I won't get enough attention. But it's really based on the state of California's funding ratios, and a combination of that and how the district negotiates with the unions. But it's about, in elementary school, it's about 32 on average students to a teacher. It's often less in the lower grades, and maybe a little bit higher in some of the upper grades. And then I want to say about 35 to 1 in the high schools, in the secondary schools. Now that is on average. And I think right now, interestingly, because we've lost a lot of students, but yet have a lot of extra funding to try to recover from the pandemic losses, a lot of the classroom sizes are actually much smaller than that. If you go and visit schools, that you will see fewer students than that.
Are you seeing that other question from Barbara?
Yeah, I'm just looking at this. Let's see, Barbara, do you want to elaborate a little bit what you're talking about? What you're referring to there about the confrontational versus collaborative actions?
Well, hello, Susan. I'm
Hi.
a little under the weather still, but we've seen media focused on some of the very hostile situations between parents and teachers in schools, in different parts of the country. The last, I'd say the last year. Some of it may be COVID driven, but it has to do with what is being taught in the classroom.
I see what you're asking. Yes, thank you. I don't think we have seen so much of that in Pasadena.
Hooray.
Yeah, but it's something that we should be very, I don't think we should be complacent about it either. This district, so you're talking about there, just to elaborate, if I understand you correctly, there's been a lot of kind of parents protesting, how things are being taught, and, ethnic studies, and our kids being indoctrinated with some kind of
critical race theory,
left-wing extremism, and I would say that two things. One is that on the whole, I feel like the relationship between parents and teachers and schools in PUSD is on the whole quite good and supportive. Certainly there was a lot of consternation during the pandemic about dealing with remote learning and then masking and going back to school. And, there just was a lot of heightened anxiety about that, understandably. But I feel like in some ways our district managed that better than many. We had already a one-to-one, every child had a Chromebook. So they were able to turn around on a dime when things shut down and send kids home with a Chromebook and with some systems that teachers could use to do remote learning. Now, it was hard and it wasn't great, especially for the younger kids, but it wasn't great for anybody. But in terms of sort of being prepared to pivot and deal with the situation, the district handed out hotspots to families that didn't have Wi-Fi. That was handled, I think, on the whole pretty well. And I would say that the communication with the district, with the families about what was happening was, they really stepped up their game in that regard in the last few years, which was good. And the other thing I would say is this district has been pretty much out in front when it comes to developing a responsive curriculum that is culturally responsive, that is really trying to teach critical thinking about what we're learning. And there's a student think tank that has had a lot of input on that, of high school students. And it's amazing to hear them talk because they're very, very thoughtful. And it's exciting to see, that kind of ownership of their own education. And I think parents, for the most part, have been fine with that here. I know in La Cañada, there was a lot of fuss about this stuff recently. And it may be, I hate to say this, but it may be in part because some of the families who might be taking that confrontational line or be upset about that, or maybe they have their kids in the private schools. I don't know. I don't want to knock the private schools that way. I don't know. I can say that's the case, but I think that on the whole, that has not been a huge issue here.
I wonder if Penn could take some credit for the fact that there has been an ameliorative quality with this.
I think that we have some amazing parent leadership in our community, and I want to actually call out the African American Parent Council in this district, which has been, even though it's a relatively small percentage of the families in our schools, the leadership of those parents has been really strong and very constructive and very, they've worked with the district, they work with the teachers in very constructive ways. And I think, and with other parents too. So one of the things they're doing now is something called a Math Power Hour, where they designed with the district, with administrators and teachers, a program for volunteers to come and push into the classrooms and help kids in the younger grades who are struggling with math. Because, it's so important that they get that foundation and have that sense of confidence early on about that.
Right.
So I think, and there are a number of I do think that Penn can take some credit for having encouraged a lot of parents to get involved and to get involved in ways that are constructive, rather than just saying, I don't like this, I'm mad, but, kind of, okay, who do you talk to? If that doesn't work, who do you talk to next? If that doesn't work, how do we advocate for this to be addressed? And we don't advocate for families, but we do help them sort of navigate the system a little to figure out who they need to talk with. And to encourage them to work together. And if we see something is a problem, not just that one person is having at one school, but something that is coming up in different places, then we will go to the district and say, hey, we're hearing, that this is an issue.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Let me just jump back to my screen for just a minute. If I can. How do I get rid of this? Okay. Okay. So one of the things I was saying a minute ago was that I've kind of my work with the group integratedschools.org that started in 2017 has really sort of reshaped a little bit the way I think about my Penn work. And one of the ways I think that integrated schools is a little bit different is that it is, Penn has really focused on saying, okay, you're a parent, you want the best for your child, come and see what PUSD has to offer and look at what's really there before you make up your mind. And integrated schools is taking a little bit more of a larger societal picture and saying integration is kind of, and our ability to learn together is foundational for our American democracy. And so where have our efforts as a country to increase integration run into roadblocks? Well, it's mostly been white parents saying either we're gonna fight this directly, or we're going to walk away from the public schools. In the South, you had segregation academies, but all over the country, you have districts where a piece of the district breaks off. We don't want to be part of that urban school district anymore. We're going to have our little suburban one, where people talk about, I want to have a choice about where I send my kid, and I'm going to go somewhere else. And usually the somewhere else is somewhere where there's a concentration of white kids and resources. And so integrated schools take on that is really that, that's not serving our society well. And that right now, the options for, court-ordered desegregation for the government to step in are very limited because of decisions that have come from the Supreme Court, notably in around 2012, really limited those options. So then it falls back on those of us who are making choices about where our kids go to school to think about what are the larger implications of our choices. And the way that that's informed my work with Penn is that, I used to say, okay, here's all these options that you have. Here are all these great programs. Here are these different schools. Here's how you could go and tour them. And, we'll help you find a school that's a really good school for your kid. And I still say that. I still talk about those things. But I also feel that one of the things that is kind of what I call a paradox of privilege is that when people have a lot of choices, the more they worry about making the right choice or the best choice, right? And I think the parenting culture right now is kind of taken that to an extreme that is not really serving anyone. I don't think it serves families. It doesn't serve the families with privilege, and it doesn't serve our society, is sort of how I feel about that. What I usually say to preschool parents is, look, just because you have choices doesn't mean that there is one right choice or best choice for your child, and all the other choices are wrong or demonstrably inferior. That's just not true. And so, when I try to reframe it, I say, look, so what is really at stake here? The choice of school is not the most decisive factor in determining your child's life outcomes. We look at something like test scores, and people look at those, those maps or grade schools where it gives a 10 or, anything from a 1 to a 10, and it's a circle that's red or green or yellow, and the red is bad and the green is good. And, so people don't even look at a school that has, a low number on that rating, because obviously it's not a good school. But that's actually not true. And there are a number of schools in Pasadena Unified. And Barbara, the school where your son is enrolled, his child is Jackson, is a good example of that, where it's the number that you'll find on the map or on great schools is relatively low, but people are climbing all over each other to get into that school because it's got amazing stuff going on, and the kids are coming out of there bilingual, and they're learning science, and they're doing lots of hands-on activities, and basically have some amazing teachers. So so there's that. And then I think the other piece of it is that, I really feel like we need to think about education not as a commodity, like, we're buying, the best frozen peas or the best car seat, or, it's a public good. So, the choices we make have implications not just for what our child will get out of it, but also for shaping the world that our child will grow up and live in. So what I try to do is kind of, get away from the giving my child every advantage frame to how do I pass on my most deeply held values to my child. And I think the giving my child every advantage or wanting the best for my child kind of got a bit of a knock back in, I think this was in 2019 when the college admissions scandal broke, and there were people who were bribing coaches to say that their kid was, a track star or a champion rower or soccer player or whatever when they weren't. And, it was kind of like, what's the extreme of kind of trying to give your child every advantage or get the best for my child, and how can that go wrong? And that was kind of like, yep, that didn't help. That was not a good thing. But the other thing is, when you think about passing on our values, the only way to do that is to live them. And that means sort of testing them against messy reality. And sometimes I'm talking to parents who have their kids at a, let's say a co-op preschool that is very small and very intimate and has a very progressive learning style. And they really focus on the, how do we use our words and how do we talk to each other? And that's great. But the point of learning those skills is not to always be in a little tight bubble with other people who have been taught just the same way you have. It's to be able to go out into the world and live with people and learn to get along and learn how to overcome difficulties and challenges and work together. And so anyway, that is kind of the, how I have been trying to reframe my discussion with parents about school choices. And I feel like it's resonating with a lot of parents. I think a lot of parents realize that that test scores really don't tell you that much about the quality of instruction in a school. It's really more about it tells you more about the level of the socioeconomic privilege of the families on average who attend there. And, maybe 20% of that score can be attributed to the quality of instruction at a school. So it doesn't really tell you how your child is going to do at that school. And I think people have begun to sort of recognize that that's the case. So what do? I sort of try to say, okay, talk about your own family's values, really articulate the things that are important to you. And then I encourage parents to say, what are you afraid of? Because, I think a lot of times we have these conversations about good and bad schools, but we don't really say what we mean by that. And so I really encourage people to name what it is that they're afraid of, and then to really kind of reflect on where those fears come from. Because a lot of times, they are kind of not founded on anything that's true, or they're not really fears that are attributable to a school. I mean, when I was, I was talking with a group of parents we were meeting at a park, and their kids were playing, and we were talking about schools, and one of them said, well, I'm really worried about, school shootings. And I said, that's not a public school problem. That's a United States of America problem. I mean, this park, anybody could come in and cause mayhem. So where are the fears that you have coming from, and are they really about the school, or is it about something that's apart from that? And then the other thing I say is, let's look at the strengths that your family brings to guide your child's journey, because it is a journey, and this, I'm sure by now, at our age, we know that it is not so much about catching all the right breaks as it is sort of learning how to work with what life hands you and how to make the most of the opportunities that do come your way. And so that's the other piece of it. And then finally, I just tell people, you have to have an open mind, and you have to, there's so many perceptions and misperceptions and so many judgments that we get from other people. And if somebody's spending $25,000 a year to send their child to a private elementary school, they're going to want to believe that school has the kind of value that's actually worth $25,000 more than what you would get at a public school, and they're going to say so. And a lot of times parents are really kind of bullied by each other about, what's going on here. So that I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And again, I'd love to take it back to you and any questions you have. I'm going to also just quickly drop some things into the chat if I can find these links. But feel free to unmute and ask a question or put it in the chat if that's easier.
Yeah, for those of you that are on the convocation, we have about 10 minutes left, and this has been such a rich presentation, and I'm sure there's all kinds of things that Susan has sparked in terms of our own thinking, our own experience, our own children, for many of us, our own grandchildren. So what else would you like to talk about?
Yeah, William, go ahead.
I'd like to comment. Some of us, first we heard of Penn was in an excellent article in the Pasadena Star News, and this was pre-pandemic. But I think I would be interested to know how the organization has helped students, especially during this pandemic.
Well, one of the things, we're really about information and getting people connected with the information they need, helping them navigate a school system, which, the focus of the administrators of the school system is to deliver instruction. And sometimes they do a really good job of communicating what they're doing with families. And sometimes, sometimes I think there's so much inside what they're doing that it's hard to imagine, from a parent's perspective, what the questions are and what they need to know. So a lot of what we did was really to answer questions, to make sure that those communications were getting out, to get clarification on questions that people had, just kind of keep people posted on what was going on and where they could find the resources that they needed. It was probably our main thing. And then, our programs, our information programs went from being in person to being online, which, we kind of miss the in-person aspect of it, because I think it's helpful for people to see a room full of other people who are also thinking about their public school options. Because in this town, you can be in a lot of places and not see that. But, you can sort of get the idea on Zoom as well.
This has been very informative, and thank you so much for sharing with us.
You're welcome. I just want to say real quick, the links that I just dropped into the chat, and you may have another way of sharing these as well, but that picture I showed early on in my slides of the PUSD graduates in the class of 2022, I put the link to the place on the district website where you can read a little bit more about those students and a few others and what they've done, where they're going. It's amazing. Our website, pennfamilies.org, you can get a sense of what kind of information is there. We do appreciate contributions. We're a nonprofit. We have we punch way above our weight. We have a pretty tight budget, but we do offer all our services, to families and our programs for free. So we appreciate contributions. And then I also dropped in the link for integrated schools and a video that integrated schools has that kind of explains the theory of change. So that's kind of more for the big picture, what we're trying to do.
Susan, when you ask a parent, what are you afraid of? What does the parent's name?
You get all kinds of answers to that question. Interestingly, I think, from very personal ones, like, I had a bad experience in school. I was a perfectionist and I just got very anxious, and I'm afraid my kid is going to do the same thing, very intimate kind of personal things, to I'm worried about safety. I had one parent who said, she said, I'm almost embarrassed to say this, but I'm afraid my little one is going to get beat up, and I said, listen, just go visit a couple of schools, walk around a few elementary schools, any elementary school in this district, no matter which neighborhood it's in, and just sort of like, let that fear kind of say, oh, I had a picture of what was going on behind those walls. It was just terrifying. And once you see a few schools, it's like, oh, no, it's just school. Kids are in class. Sometimes they're a little rowdy, maybe, or they're running around, or they're making noise, but they're not hurting each other. It's not what's going on. So I think that it kind of runs the gamut. I think, too, sometimes, especially at elementary, people are less concerned about the academics and more about the social emotional learning, which is a part of PUSD's approach to instruction. So you get parents who are coming from a very progressive pedagogy model of preschool and don't want homework, don't want, all these kinds of approaches. And then you have other parents who do want those things, feel that's really essential. So, but I think it's partly about having a very definite idea about things having to be a certain way in order for your child to be okay. And I think that probably if I had one message, it's like, your children are actually more, flexible and resilient than that.
Right. Susan, a couple questions in the chat right now from Rachel Lausch. Do you ever get invited to speak at Pasadena churches? We kind of connect with through some of the preschools that are affiliated with churches, but I haven't been asked to speak at too many churches. So I'd love to. I'm always happy to come and just talk to whoever in the community. I think there are a lot of people who are very social justice oriented in their thinking. Yeah. But looking, have the Black Lives Matter signs, have all that stuff, and are kind of looking up here and not really thinking about how do my choices for my kids impact that bigger picture, and so I'm always happy to have that conversation. Great. And then this is from Norm Thomas. Does Penn have any dialogue with parents who are thinking about sending their children to private schools?
We try to, we try to get out as much as possible to the preschools. And if anybody has a connection with, with the preschool or, that's an opportunity to speak that we really, really appreciate. And, beyond that, it's kind of hard to know, where else to find people. We do try to use some of the social media. So there's a Pasadena Moms group, there's an Altadena Families group, and we'll always post about our programs and such there. And what's interesting is because we really are a network, we have a lot of people in the community. Often if somebody posts something on a Facebook page about, tell me about all the private schools, somebody will chime in and say, hey, have you checked out the public schools? Because, this, and this, and other people will chime in so that we don't have to actually be the only ones carrying that message.
Yeah. Well,
that's the beauty of the ambassador model of having this whole network of.
I love that
ambassadors.
ambassador piece. You had to click on who are the ambassadors for our local elementary. I want to remind all of us that we have both elementary and middle school just around the corner here on Madre Street. So we have to check out.
That's right. So you're real close then to Willard, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, amazing school. I love Willard. It's just, if you have a chance to take a tour over there, so you can go on our website, go to the calendar and find their tour dates. I think you would love it. It's just, there's nothing really better than actually going and seeing for yourself. Yes, Barbara.
Well,
yeah, my husband and I, we volunteered when we were first here. We're not able to now, but we volunteered in the local school. And we were very impressed with the teaching, and they drew us into the community. When they had functions, we were invited and felt very comfortable with the staff and very welcomed by the staff. And we're very impressed with the school. My added thought is the Pasadena school buildings have an old feeling to them. And what can be, that's superficial, so to speak, but it's when you go down like to San Marino, things seemed more modernized or more up to date or whatever. Is anything being done in that regard that kind of attracts people to the school itself, to the building itself? Because I remember walking into the building and this is really an old building.
Yeah.
And it's not really attractive.
This community has been pretty good about passing bond measures when there have been, for capital improvements to the schools. But a lot of that is, there are a lot of school buildings. This used to be a much bigger district. The number of school-age kids in this district was orders of magnitude. It was much bigger. And so there's a lot of infrastructure, and people don't like it when you close a school because it's the heart of their community, but it's hard to maintain all that infrastructure and keep it as new and nice as you might like. So I think, parents do a lot to just do beautification days, and community members can be part of that. I think in terms of making sure that the air conditioning is working, that the basics, that the technology capacity is there, that things are safe. There's certainly you can count on that. That's going to be the higher priority, but it is not necessarily going to be about making it look as nice as some other schools do look. That is a true thing.
Well, Susan, we've come to the end of our hour, and I just want to say how much we have appreciated as a community your enthusiasm for the Pasadena Unified School District, and I'm going to use a Christian term here, your ministry of truth telling about what actually is going on in the schools. It's been very, very encouraging this afternoon. As a grandfather of 8 children, I wake up every morning, and my early morning prayer is about how the core values they're being taught at home are going to be grown and challenged in school that day. And it sounds like that's a key element of the work that you're trying to encourage with parents all over this school district. And for those of us who are living at Monte Vista Groves, I'll leave you with this last thought. When Israel ends up in Babylonian captivity, the prophet Jeremiah says, now I want you to seek the shalom, the flourishing of that community. And the first thing Jeremiah talks about is you having children in Babylon and your children having children in Babylon. Susan, what you're talking about here is multi-generational. It's not, the issue isn't just what's going on in schools today, but this is a conversation about this year, next year, 10 years, 20 years from now, in terms of the fabric of the culture here in Pasadena as a result of the molding and shaping of every one of the precious children that are in our schools. So we want to thank you so much for the work that you're doing and look forward to further conversation. And we want to take of that opportunity to go tour Willard. So just for next week, let me just remind us that once a semester, we try to meet some of the new employees who are here at Monte Vista Grove. And next week on Thursday at 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock, we're going to get a chance to meet 3 of the employees, and Jim Simon will carry on a fascinating conversation with them. Once again, let's show our appreciation to Susan for what's been an absolutely fantastic presentation this afternoon. And thanks to you, Barb, Matthew, for making this connection. And Susan, again, we are very, very grateful for the conversation that we've had with you today.
Yes. Harry, if I could just say thanks to Bill Craig, who has been giving me a healthy nudge for an entire year to get Susan Schwartz on our docket for Convocation. So, Bill Craig, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the chance to speak with you.
All right. Blessings to all of you. Have a good Thursday evening. Bye-bye.
Good night.